Hi, welcome to another TeamSense webinar. My name is Caroline Rizzo, and today I'm looking forward to our discussion as we dive into the hospitality industry, specifically in the world of casinos. Before we introduce ourselves and get to talking, let's cover a few housekeeping items. So as always, questions are encouraged throughout the webinar. We ask that you place them in the Q&A panel if you do have them at the bottom of your screen. And if we have any questions, we'll get to them at the last section of our time together. As you may have noticed, the webinar is being recorded. The recording will be emailed to all of our registrants via a YouTube link in case you have to hop early or you'd like to revisit the content at a later time. You can always visit teamsense.com/webinars to see all of our past and upcoming topics. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. So, hey there, my name is Caroline Rizzo. I am from Austin, Texas. I'm part of the marketing team here at TeamSense and producer of our webinars. My goal is to learn about topics related to HR, operations, manufacturing. But hey, today we actually have a really cool guest that's a little bit outside of manufacturing. So, super excited to jump more into hospitality. But I want to first introduce Ramil, who's also part of our TeamSense team. Ramil, welcome.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm Ramil Reyes, and I am an enterprise account executive at TeamSense, and I own the business relationship with Casino Arizona and Talking Stick Resort.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Always fun to partner with you on webinars. All right. Without further ado, Braxton, we're so glad to have you here today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Braxton Myers. I'm the Chief Hospitality Officer for Casino Arizona and Talking Stick Resort, proudly owned and operated by the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community.
Awesome. Well, so glad to have you here and really excited to learn more. I am very curious about just casinos in general, tribal communities, all of that. So let's really jump into your background. So can you give us a little bit of a sense for Casino Arizona, Talking Stick Resort in general, what the company does? Obviously it's casino, but how many employees, locations? Would love to learn a little bit more of the background.
Certainly. So we are collectively, our two casinos make up Salt River Community Gaming Enterprises, and we employ about 3,400 people. Our full-service resort, Talking Stick Resort, located on the east boundary of Scottsdale in Arizona. We have 495 hotel rooms, several thousand machines, several 100,000 square feet of gaming space, a mix of poker, bingo, of slots, of course, and sportsbook and other gaming offerings. We have 19 food and beverage outlets within both casinos. Casino Arizona, being the tribe's original casino, opened about 27 years ago, and Talking Stick Resort is going to be celebrating its 15th year this year.
Wow. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's a great milestone. And, one thing that's really cool is this summer, our team actually went out to Arizona and visited and stayed at Talking Stick Resort, had a great time. I always joke though, because pretty much our entire team is from Seattle and this is their first Arizona summer. But they
It's
said,
different.
yeah, rest assured, it was very comfortable at Talking Stick Resort, and y'all have such wonderful hospitality. So thank you so much for hosting them. But wow, that's impressive. Just from an operational perspective, that is a lot to manage. And I'm also curious too, I'm when I think casinos, I'm like, okay, Las Vegas, let's go, crazy casino town, all of these things. But I'm curious to learn a little bit more about tribal casinos specifically, kind of within that community. What does that look like? Can you just share a little bit more about that in general?
Sure, absolutely. So tribal casinos, so our casinos specifically are owned and operated by the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. They're a community of 11,000 tribal members, spread out over multiple states, about 5,000 of which live here on the community boundary. We border the east side of Scottsdale and the north side of Mesa here in Arizona. The tribe was incorporated, I believe, in 1956, and obtained federal recognition shortly thereafter. Excuse me. And the uniqueness between retail gaming, or what we call corporate gaming, and tribal gaming, or native gaming, is what we do goes to support a community of 11,000 people. So our revenues go to support things like housing assistance, medical, education services for the community at large. The community is sovereign and self-governing, so the community itself operates the casinos, as well as several other economic development businesses within the community boundaries and actually outside of the community boundaries as well. So we employ several tribal members, and we have uniquenesses to our structure, including things like native preference and that type of thing. So it's an interesting environment. I've been in this industry for just under 5 years now. Has spent many years within the hospitality industry as a whole. In fact, the entirety of my career. I started when I was 16 years old, originally born and raised in Maui, Hawaii. So in Hawaii, you don't have a whole lot of options. You start, you generally kind of go down a path, and a lot of times that path is hospitality. So I spent many years of my career with Starwood Hotels, owned and operated an asset management firm thereafter for a number of years before getting into native gaming about 5 years ago with a tribe in Central California.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really impressive background that you have in general. And just from a kind of hotel resort perspective, but then, it is a whole new thing jumping into this new setup with the community and really understanding the ins and the outs. But I've always really appreciated that about tribal casinos in general, of just the contribution back to the community and supporting that. I think is just something really important to mention. So that's really fantastic. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about your role. You're a chief hospitality officer. That must encompass a lot. And, a lot of the times we meet with a lot of HR managers that are concerned with staffing, and that's kind of their big challenge for the day. Tell us what really you were hired to do, and kind of what are some of the biggest challenges that you're trying to solve today?
Sure. So I lead the hospitality division, which is basically everything non-gaming. My counterpart is the chief operations officer who leads the gaming divisions. So I manage food and beverage, resort operations, hotel amenities. So basically everything within the front-facing structure that is non-gaming related. So between my counterpart and I, we operate about 98% of the business as a whole. Our corporate structure, we have our chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, as well as myself, our COO, and a CIO. The business itself has been, we have a tremendous amount of tenure within the business. A lot of our employees have been here for 20 plus years. In fact, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it was upwards of 20% of our entire workforce has been here for 20 plus years now. So some of the uniquenesses that kind of brought us to TeamSense or wanted to, kind of start us down the path of looking for a solution, were the need to kind of the need to tear down the entirety of our attendance policy and kind of revisit what that meant. It was a policy that hadn't been revisited for a number of years, so we looked to kind of tear it down as a whole. And one of the things that we wanted to add to it was transparency and accountability. So TeamSense really fit well for us to kind of insert both of those metrics within the structure itself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, I will have to kind of let Ramil steal some of the spotlight here, because he was there, in terms of the beginning of when y'all discovered TeamSense. So Ramil, I'll kind of pass off this part of the discussion to you, but would love to hear more about this story in general.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. When we first met, Braxton, you were working to improve just more than a few processes, one of which focused on redesigning the attendance policy and finding a call-off solution. And you spoke a little bit about this, but it would be interesting to elaborate a little bit more about the impetus for changing the existing process beyond just rebuilding it. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we struggled with from kind of an engagement metric was transparency, and as a whole, I think we've struggled with accountability for a while. So we wanted to address both of those things. We as we went down that path, we realized attendance was probably one of the lowest hanging fruit to be able to do that. But we wanted to do it in a way, because it is so forward facing, right? It touches every team member within the organization. We wanted to make sure that we did it in a way that was not only responsible to our team members and the business, but also had the tools in place to kind of combat what we realized was the actual root issues, right? And some of the root issues was a lack of transparency, not only amongst leaders, but also amongst team members themselves. And all of our tracking metrics were Excel spreadsheets, right? We ran the entirety of our attendance policy via Excel, and And we needed to get away from that, right? There was obviously inherent problems with individual departments, individual teams managing their attendance based on just Excel spreadsheets that were stored in different places, that were formatted in different ways, and they were kind of unique to each individual department and sometimes each individual team. So in order to make sure that we went forward with kind of the most efficient solution that we could possibly get, we realized we had to kind of rebuild a lot of the internal processes, as well as just, in addition to just re-releasing an attendance policy, right? We could re-release an attendance policy and try to fix it, kind of from a forward-facing standpoint. But if we didn't do the things to kind of back that up on the system side to be able to address the root causes of the issue, then we were going to end up back in the same place, just with a new system. So we've worked to tear it down, add value and reduce waste from the process itself. And we've implemented TeamSense, as well as a couple other scheduling platforms, to be able to, or in the process of implementing a couple new scheduling platforms to be able to kind of address the root causes of the issues we were experiencing.
No, thanks for that. And it's interesting. I think everyone knows that a big focus of ours is manufacturing companies, and that's why this is a little bit unique. But an interesting observation, especially when we were on site with you, is to understand that there were a lot of parallels between the things that you're solving at a casino and resort and our manufacturing customers. And one thing that you shared there was about reducing waste. You also talked a little bit about operational efficiencies and reducing manual effort. But what's interesting to me too is that when we talk about transparency and accountability, that manifests itself in multiple ways. So just to compare notes, when I hear that, I think about, how it helps solve retention or reduce attrition or reduce disputes, things like that. I think that's kind of an interesting comparison with, and kind of highlights how TeamSense solves a very horizontal problem, and it's very similar. I don't know if you share the same observation, but that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, definitely, it does. It as the enterprises have grown over the years now, like I said, to just shy of 3,400 team members, there are a lot of similarities just from that volume with other businesses, manufacturing included. Not only the need to kind of manage workforces between two properties, plus our human resources office, which is also remote and offsite, but also to be able to kind of unify those teams in a way that kind of felt organic and made a very clear direction, or started us down the path of a clear direction of kind of implementing technological solutions to be able to kind of solve some complex problems when it comes to employing 3,400 people, right? We have 27 departments within 3 locations, and some departments, my largest being just shy of 1,300, and my smallest being 3. So, being able to scale to and kind of adjust to those complexities. My department with 1,300 people having leads, supervisors, managers, assistant directors, and directors, and my department of 2 having just me. So, there's all sorts of different nuances and complexities when it comes to managing attendance or human resources in general for that many people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we go through a lot of these implementations, and whether it's 100 people or 3,400 people, it is a change. So there's change management to it. So it'd be interesting to get your perspective about experience implementing TeamSense. How did you work to ensure a smooth transition?
Sure. So we, boy, I think you and I first met almost a year ago,
Yeah.
back in
Wow.
November. So we kind of, like I said, we took a kind of global view as to the problems that we needed to solve, and we realized that this was we have a team that has been here for a tremendous amount of time, and not a lot has changed within our attendance structure, within our attendance policy for a number of years. So this was going to be a large shift. So we looked for solutions that were going to be as easy to adopt on the UX side, right, on the end user side as possible. One of the things that that we originally spoke about that kind of attracted me to the platform was the fact that this isn't an app, right? This isn't an app that somebody installs on their phone. There's all sorts of, hesitations and, and kind of, misnomers around the installation of an actual app itself. But the fact that this was a text-based platform, which launched into, native applications was big for us. And it really helped with the implementation. So we started off with the implementation team, who was wonderful. They did a really fantastic job at before we got into any of the complexities of the system. We spent several weeks with them just understanding the business. So they wanted to understand before we started down any of the paths of implementation exactly how our business worked, what our structure looked like, what pain points we could possibly experience during the implementation process, and how we were going to fit this together. And then once they had a pretty firm understanding of what that looked like, we were off to the races. And we built the integrations with our HRIS platform. We're continuing down that path to kind of further those integrations as time goes on, and as we kind of begin to look into phase 2 and phase 3 of what the system is going to be able to do for us. But the implementation team kind of led that charge and made it very easy for us to kind of go through all of those complexities to make sure we didn't drop the ball.
Yeah.
We had that I can think of two kind of, roadblocks. They weren't stoppers by any means, but they were hindrances to our structure. And Sarah and her team found, creative solutions to be able to get through them. And what I liked about the platform was, we're not married to anything, right? You guys were willing to make operational changes to the structure and to the platform itself, to be able to make sure that it fit well with us. And as we expand on those implementations and those integrations with our other platforms, I see, the system only becoming more and more usable, right? So we adopted the platform and communicated it out as the sole way to communicate absences and tardies to our team. So it is now at 100% utilization of our team, and it is the only way that team members are able to call in for tardies or for absences. The biggest
Yep.
piece. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. I was just acknowledging what you were saying.
The biggest issue, obviously, when you're releasing something that changes kind of the daily life of 3,400 people is the release, right, and the communication strategy that comes along with it. The implementation team gave us some really great best practices as to kind of how to go about doing that. We took those and we started about a 30-day campaign prior to launch, where we put out screenshots, kind of held informational town halls with team members to be able to understand how the platform works, understand what it does and what it doesn't do, and then we were able to successfully roll it out. So we had a significant amount of apprehension around the rollout. Change management, like you said, can be tough. We look, I think change management is a bit of a kind of an antiquated process, and we really look to make sure that we're maintaining business continuity over change management, and we did so. And there were pain points. Certainly, there were people that struggled with adoption, but I would say that was probably less than 1% of our entire team. The first time somebody used it, they realized how easy it was, and we really didn't get a lot of negative feedback after somebody had used it one time.
Yep. Yeah, that's great feedback, by the way. And that's what we found as well. I mean, if people think about just the call-off process, they're using a frame of reference that they have, and it's only until they actually use it that the light bulbs start to come on. And so appreciate the feedback, especially big shout out to Sarah Irvin, my customer success partner and our support team. One of the things I observed is how well you partnered with other stakeholders in your own organization, and that I observed that not only in the weekly cadence in the implementation. You had I don't know if it was mandatory or if that's a part of culturally what you guys do, but I thought that was interesting, and it was great because cross-functional stakeholders involved at the very beginning. You partnered very well with your VP of HR, and Diane was always involved. So anyway, I just wanted to share that observation. I thought that was an important part of a successful transition. So it's not just TeamSense pushing the customer and the customer not just pushing TeamSense, but it was a good part.
Yeah, we involve as many people as necessary to be able to get the job done. So I started down the path of finding a solution simply because my departments encompass, almost 3/4 of our entire workforce. So attendance is arguably more a me problem than it is an anyone else problem. But we initially, you guys presented it to the entire executive committee. Everyone kind of gave their nod and their sign-offs, and then we went into implementation with myself, our IT division, our information security division, our implementation division, all of our executive team, as well as Diane as well. So it was one of the larger changes we made this year when it comes to kind of forward-facing systems for our team members. So we wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity to test the system and kind of understand what its nuances were going to be before we went out with the communication strategy to be able to release it to the entirety of the team. So we discovered a lot during the implementation. There were a few things that we didn't discover right until we actually until we actually launched the platform, but those things were relatively pretty easily rectified, and we are at 100% participation today, so it is going well.
It's great to hear.
That's
So,
really
how are you doing, Caroline? I was just kind of.
No. I love hearing stories like this. I think a lot of what we see, and you hinted at this already, is the transparency piece, and really, it's not just transparency for the company and having more insight. It's having that transparency for the employees too, and giving them a little bit more power in their hands to have more accountability and feel that, I think it ultimately makes for happier employees too. So I'm glad to hear that it's been 100% adopted. They see how easy it is, and it just makes it easy for everybody. But I'd love to kind of talk a little bit kind of about the post-implementation experience. What really has been your experience now that TeamSense is in place? Are there any significant changes that you've noticed in general at your company?
Yeah, so we've noticed several things. One, I think human nature kind of lends itself to the theory that transparency or um, for lack of a better term, sort of airing your dirty laundry kind of begins to sort of rectify situations organically. So we have seen a bit of that. We've seen people who I think now Excel spreadsheet sitting on someone's desktop that is, haphazardly updating it when they have time. I think we've kind of begun the shift of getting people to understand the importance of attendance and what it really actually means to the business. We also have, dispute resolution processes, right? We have 3,400 people within the organization, and several of them work, and all of them from an hourly basis have a dispute resolution process to be able to dispute things like attendance. So the transparency has helped tremendously in that regard. We've seen about a 50% decline in the dispute resolution process being initiated for attendance violations, because now the transparency and the trackability is really kind of unquestionable, and there's really no like, oh well, I left a message on my supervisor from Tuesday's cell phone, right? That I was going to be out today. So the global transparency, both from an employee standpoint and from a leadership standpoint, has probably been the biggest impact. We are now kind of rolling the platform into the larger revamp or rebuild of the attendance policy that we're going to be kicking off here in the next couple months. So and we're transitioning the organization to an attendance or to a points-based attendance program. So, having that trackability and having that ability to be able to to be able to see what it is that all of the infractions and compare the infractions to kind of the point accumulation, and do so in a manner that not only a team member can see, but also every level of management can see as well. That transparency is going to be huge for us, because in all honesty, we had departments that were adhering to the attendance policy as it was written, and we had departments that were struggling to do so, right? So holding people accountable when they see their friends and fellow team members in other departments or other teams not being held accountable to those same standards obviously caused a lot of issues, right? So that the path forward to be able to kind of see complete resolution to that issue is very exciting, because dispute resolutions, while I'm 100% on board with the need for them in an organization this large, they are very time consuming, and we have several people within the HR structure that manage pretty much solely just that. So being able to kind of equip the team with the tools necessary to be able to reduce that frequency as best as possible has been huge for us. We're sitting at probably a 15 to 20% decline in total attendance infractions if we look at the attendance as a whole. Once again, the methodology of tracking prior to TeamSense was not great, right? So I wish we had a solid metric to be able to say, yes, we're down, X amount of percent. But as best as we can put together, we have seen a not insignificant decline. Attendance within a structure and within a business like hospitality is incredibly important, and it can become incredibly costly, because very rarely will we schedule someone that we actually can't have on the floor for that day, right? I would say probably 90 to 95% of the time, if someone is called out or late, that needs to be covered by someone. We can't just kind of fluff the schedule to be able to, or reassign tasks, because we are heavily regulated. We are a casino, so there's a lot of cross authorization. There's a lot of different nuances to the business we're in, and it doesn't lend itself to be able to kind of just usurp an attendance call off without having to replace that person. And overtime's costly, right? There's no two ways about it. It's costly, and it's only getting more costly as time goes on. So it's any reduction in kind of that attendance or that immediate attendance infraction that needs to be replaced at a high dollar amount or a high expense is very welcome. We love it.
Yeah, no, that's so insightful. Sorry, Ramil, I wasn't sure if you're going to say.
Yeah, I just kind of think about, again, the continued parallels with manufacturing and the things that yeah. So as you're talking about even filling shifts, the fact that casinos have very specialized roles. You've got the blackjack dealers, you have craps dealers, and then I think about manufacturing, where you have very specific workers who are experts with certain machines to assemble or fill products. And so that's another layer of complexity. It's not just it's good to have lead time to fill shifts, but then you got to also have that lead time to fill them with the right people. And so certainly that's another dimension to it that's really interesting.
Yeah, our within I would say 90 well, all gaming operations that I know, both corporate and native within the country, have a licensing process, right? So we are heavily regulated, and we are and our licenses dictate the roles that we can play within the organization. So I don't necessarily have the ability to pull someone from one department and put them in another for the day. Sometimes I don't even have the ability to pull one department from another position and put them in another for a short period of time. So call-offs are they're complex, right? They're not as easy as when I get a call off for my food and beverage department. It's not as easy as picking one of 1,300 people. A lot of times it's picking one of two people, right? Or one of three people that can cover that shift. And, unfortunately, 80, 90% of the time that one or two people that are available are going to result in overtime. So anything that we can do to kind of lend transparency to that process and get as much lead time and as much as much course correction around that as possible is big for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think a lot, so you mentioned implementing a points policy. That is very common in manufacturing, and there's always discussion around having a points policy or not. And my brain is like spinning right now because I know so many people that we've had on this webinar that if you ever need someone to talk to about the implementation, they're such a good resource because they have such great stories and feedback. But one thing that we've been working on at TeamSense that we've been rolling out are kind of these points notifications. So people are able to see in advance, this is what your point status is, so that you can make that decision or make the decision to either go in or like, am I really going to be able to call off today? I don't know. Super Bowl was last night. I'm feeling tired, but I don't, that those are the decisions that these people have the ability to make and have the accountability for. So I do think I've seen a lot of really interesting perspectives around points policies, and we have a lot of great resources too. I'm sure Sarah is all over it in terms of supporting y'all through this, but yeah, that's really interesting to hear too. Kind of an effort for time here. I'm like, wow, we could talk for hours. What in general has been the feedback from your workforce? Like any specific stories that you've heard from people in general?
Yeah, I think, overwhelmingly, it's just become easier, right? So a lot of teams, depending on the outlet that you're working or the shift that you're working on, they had different, call out procedures, right? So if everyone was held to, a certain amount of time prior to their shift as the general enterprise-wide policy, but you might have to go through kind of a workflow in your head of like, well, I'm scheduled in X outlet today, and it's a Tuesday, so I'm with X supervisor, so I'm expected to call out to this person, right? And that if you're struggling with, an issue with your child, or you're sick in bed, having to go through those kind of, redundant processes in your head to try to figure out who am I supposed to call out to today, is really kind of cumbersome and didn't feel like it was the right thing to do for our team. So, standardizing that and getting rid of the unmonitored voicemails and the cell phones and the all the other different ways that we had kind of created to try to capture call-offs and late calls as best as possible, has been very positively received by the team. One number, shoot a text, we got it. Excuse me. So having the ability to communicate that out to the team and having the ability to kind of eliminate all of those other options and all of those kind of workflow processes that people had to contend with, has been very well received. In addition to that, I think we exist in Scottsdale. We have several large big, multinational events throughout the year, Waste Management Open, so on and so forth, kind of right in our backyard. And those events, while we love them from a compression and standpoint within the market, they cause a significant amount of traffic.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
and they're a pretty big disruption to can be a pretty big disruption to our team. Well, both of our casinos are about 8 miles away from each other, right on the 101 corridor, which is one of the heaviest trafficked thoroughfares within the Phoenix Valley. So, those types of events, in addition to accidents and that type of thing, have significant impacts on our business. So, giving our team members the ability to send a quick text, and fill out a quick form, as opposed to having to search through their phone to be able to find that person they're supposed to call off to, has been very well received. Like I said, after we received some, hesitation, right, to the adoption of any new process, and universally, as soon as somebody has done it at least one time, we have not received any sort of feedback from anyone that they didn't like the experience, and the pushback kind of ends at that first use.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I was thinking a little bit about, I've been with TeamSense a little over a year and a half now. It still does not cease to surprise me when we see the reaction from workers when they first use the system, because you're right, there's a little bit of skepticism, reluctance in changing to a new system. But once they actually use it, I mean, I'm thinking of one example where they kind of squealed into light, not only because it was easy, but they get to use emojis. So it's like the little things that really delight people. But
Yeah, I think one of the just as we were going through the implementation process, we came up with some kind of unique issues, right? We found out that we have some team members that we employ a lot of family. So we found out that there are some team members that are husband and wife duos that share a cell phone.
mhm.
So being able to disinherit their phone number from their TeamSense profile, so once they text it into the system and ask them who they were, as opposed to making the assumption of who they were, which is a fantastic feature, and we love that for 99.99% of our team. But for the for the couple dozen team members that that actually share a physical cell phone, being able to kind of work through those issues during implementation to make sure that everyone that we could get to 100% adoption, and that we didn't have to change the way that we were going to go about doing this simply because of system limitations was great. So that also I think that also was key to making sure that the satisfaction with the product itself remains at a very high level.
And it's always great feedback. That's a mark of a good partner, that you continue to challenge us with things that you need. It forces us to really look at how we thoughtfully design the product. So thanks
Yeah,
for
that was certainly was not an issue we knew we had before we went into implementation. So here we are.
so well, Caroline, how are we doing on time? Are we still good?
Oh,
Or
we still got like 5-10 minutes, so
okay,
yeah.
so one of the things that is always interesting to hear. So we talked about implementation, post-implementation, but you can't talk about post-implementation unless you talk about kind of the business results. And you've shared several, right? 100% adoption, 50% reduction in disputes, 10 to 20% reduction in issues with attendance infractions. And so I think, and that's great to hear, by the way. I think it would be good to understand, because this is a journey, directionally, what are you working to achieve? Because, and let me tell you where I'm going with this, because there's this pattern. So there's the attendance issue, fix the broken arm process of call offs. But ultimately, when I work with a lot of customers, including yourselves, you're solving a data problem, right? And solving that data problem solves a lot of things. So kind of interested to see if directionally you're leveraging that a little bit more to do other things.
Yeah, we're looking at kind of I think as soon as we got through implementation, we immediately started looking at what's next. So as we go to rebuild the attendance policy and implement the points-based system later this year, having the text response for number of points accumulated is probably going to be phase 1.5. And then phase 2 for us looks like a much more robust implementation or integration with our HRIS and our scheduling platform, because we're in the process of transitioning our scheduling platform right now. What we wanted to do was we wanted to come out with TeamSense, because that was going to be the largest piece to have to adopt, right? That was going to be the thing that literally touches every one of our team members at some point. Whereas the scheduling platform might not necessarily touch everyone, right? They'll be able to view their schedules, but we're still going to generally print a schedule or send out a schedule via whatever channel we put out, and they're going to be able to digest that schedule. And our managers and supervisors are going to transition to a new scheduling platform, but our team members, the thing that touches every single one of our team members was the thing that we kind of wanted to check off first. So now that everyone is in 100% adoption, now we're kind of going into phase 2 and phase 3. I really have a lot of respect for the development team within TeamSense. I'm on a call with them weekly, actually, to work through a bunch of really exciting new stuff that they have kind of in the pipeline, to be able to assist and in kind of what the robustness of the adoption within the product. So text response for number of attendance points, adaptive text response to different issues, right? Being able to design more forms within the organization to be able to address more issues, right? So we just put out the enterprises has a program every year where we purchase tickets for our team members for whatever event that they choose to attend for the year. So it could be a baseball game, could be a water park, could be what have you. We put them out in the spring for the summer for all of our team members and their families to be able to enjoy a special day out with their family. So, you know, that was a very manual process up until right now, right? This was we were doing that by setting up ticket desks at each of our locations for several days, and it just became this kind of very cumbersome, very big, hairy, scary process that we had to go through every year. And it was well received by our team, but because it was such a manual process, it was also a dissatisfier, right? Because we didn't collect the amount of people that wanted each one of these things prior to getting out there and offering them out. So inevitably we would run out of kind of the most popular ones, and sometimes the most popular ones would be consistent and sometimes they would be very different, right? So when we have a very close partnership with Arizona Diamondbacks, and when the Diamondbacks were doing well, those tickets you couldn't get them, right? That was what every one of our team members wanted to do. So the fervor and the popularity of certain activities fluctuated significantly. So, long story long, we just implemented a new form and sent that out to all team members based on the communication platform within TeamSense to kind of collect, okay, what do you want to do next summer, right? So that we can generally have a count, and we can go out and start negotiating with our vendor partners to be able to get everyone to get the thing that they want, right? It's tough to put out like a really cool morale program like that every year, but then have it be a dissatisfier for a portion of our people. So really, as we go forward, kind of discovering all the new and unique ways that we can use a communication tool for the communication piece of TeamSense, not necessarily the attendance side, but has been very exciting for our team because we didn't have one. We didn't have a two-way text platform for our team, and that was all done via, individual communications with managers and supervisors. And having one robust platform on the communication side is definitely going to be TeamSense 2.0 for us as we kind of go into figuring out all the different ways to be able to more effectively communicate with our teams.
That's exciting. That's super
I
exciting.
was like, that's so cool. That's such a good program.
Yeah, it's going to be we're going to reduce down the labor required to be able to achieve that by probably 80-90%, which I'm very thrilled about. So it's going to be great.
That's really fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I mean, any sort of employee engagement, we've seen a lot of different tactics that people use, but anything that really shows that you're truly listening to your employees, I think is really the key. And so being able to really master that and have the tools to do it effectively and efficiently without a lot of manual labor is a win-win-win. So that's fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
So we are rounding up on our time. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but I want to get a sense from your perspective here. And this is kind of how we always like to wrap up our webinars, but obviously we've loved getting to know you and your team. I know our team has really enjoyed working with your team and obviously had an incredible visit this last summer in Arizona too. It's clear that you have people that have worked for Casino Arizona, Talking Stick Resort for 20 plus years, and I can obviously see why. From your perspective, like why should someone consider Casino Arizona or Talking Stick Resort for the next role?
This community has, I joined this organization in May of last year, but this community has a reputation for a pretty superior level of employee engagement when it comes to kind of all levels of both satisfiers and dissatisfiers on the employment side. Our organization traditionally pays very well. We offer a tremendously robust benefits package, flexible scheduling, all sorts of different reasons why coming to work for an organization such as this is something that I considered. I'm very happy that I did, and I couldn't see myself going outside of this industry. And I hope I don't have to see myself going outside of this organization for quite some time. I love waking up every day and knowing that the contributions that I make today go to support, the livelihood and social services for 11,000 people. And that to me is incredibly important, and I never lose sight of that. It's why I've kind of landed within this industry, and one of the main reasons why I love it as much as I do. But yeah, as a whole, our organization is large, it's robust, it's very dynamic. Casinos in general. One of the things that I've always told people, especially that are new to their career and wanting to come into a new organization or a new kind of travel down a new path of exploration for themselves, is that this is a large organization, and we have everything from accountants to housekeepers to retail to slot attendants to valet attendants. I mean, there's if you are introverted and you like to work and you're task oriented, we have jobs for that. If you're extroverted and you love to meet people, I have a ton of jobs for that. You can really find yourself, I think, within organizations as diverse as hospitality and casinos in general, because no matter what it is that you like to do, we probably have something for you.
It's fantastic. Yeah, no surprise there. Well, that's wonderful. I'm hoping that next time I get to join the TeamSense team out to Arizona and come visit myself.
For your sake, I hope it's not July.
Well, I'm from Texas. I can handle it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Ramil and I both deal with it. We're both based here in Austin, but well, Braxton, it's been so great meeting you and learning more about your story. Again, we're really appreciative of you taking the time out of your super demanding, busy schedule. But this has been really helpful, really encouraging, and again, super relevant to even people in our audience that are in manufacturing. The parallels are just so on point. And Ramil, thanks again, as always, for joining. Really appreciate your perspective here too. And for those that joined us today, thank you so much again. We will be sending out the recording via email if you registered, and you can always visit teamsense.com/webinars to come see more of our recordings or what we have upcoming. Without further ado, that's our time. Braxton, thanks so much again. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
See ya. Bye.